For 3 years I carried an EpiPen everywhere we went. For 3 years I read every ingredient label before cooking. For 3 years I called ahead to restaurants, explained the situation to waiters, refused dinner invitations from people who could not guarantee a safe kitchen. For 3 years I organized my entire life around my husband's allergy to shellfish. And then one evening I walked into a restaurant to surprise him for his birthday. And I found him sitting at a table eating prawns. But that was not the worst part. The worst part was what he said when he looked up and saw me standing there. Welcome to Haely Stories. This is the place where you will find real and emotional women's stories that will touch your heart, make you feel seen, and remind you that you are never alone in what you are going through. If that is something you need in your life, then like this video, subscribe to the channel, and hit that bell icon so you never miss a single story. Now let me tell you about the 3 years I spent protecting a man from something that did not exist, and the evening I found out what was actually going on. My name is Myra Shilpa and I am 30 years old. I want to start by telling you something about myself that feels relevant to this story. I am, by nature, a careful person. Not anxious, careful. There is a difference. I read instructions. I plan ahead. I take the things that matter seriously and I follow through on them with the kind of consistency that some people find reassuring and others find slightly exhausting. When I love someone, I love them with that same carefulness. I pay attention to what they need. I remember the details. I arrange things around what matters to them without needing to be asked, because the people I love are worth that level of attention. I say this not to make myself sound virtuous. I say it because it is relevant to what happened. Because the 3 years I spent managing my husband's allergy were not a burden I resented, they were an expression of who I am when I love someone. I did those things willingly and completely and without any sense that I was going above and beyond. I was just being a wife to a man with a serious medical condition. Except the medical condition was not real. My husband's name is Raj. We had been married for 3 years when I walked into that restaurant. We had met through mutual friends, dated for a year, and married in a ceremony that was full of people we loved and genuinely felt like the beginning of something real. I had been happy in my marriage. I want to say that clearly because I think it matters. I was not looking for problems. I was not suspicious. I was happy, and I believed he was too. I also believed he was deathly allergic to shellfish. That belief shaped 3 years of my life in ways I am still accounting for. My name is Myra Shilpa. I am 30 years old. And this is the story of what I found out on a Tuesday evening in October, and what it revealed about the man I had married. Raj told me about the shellfish allergy on our 3rd date. We were at a restaurant and the waiter was describing the specials and one of them involved prawns and Raj said, quietly and without drama, that he needed to let me know he had a severe shellfish allergy. He said he carried an EpiPen. He said he had been hospitalized once years ago, before he knew how serious it was. He said he did not want it to be a big thing but he wanted me to know. I appreciated the way he told me. Not making it a crisis. Just honest information shared with someone he was beginning to trust. I took it seriously from that first evening. I asked questions: which shellfish, how severe, what did a reaction look like, what should I do if something happened? He answered all of them patiently and I filed the information and I adjusted my behavior accordingly. From that 3rd date forward I managed the allergy as though it were my own. I learned to read labels with the specific attention required by someone with a serious food allergy, the hidden shellfish in broths and sauces and seasonings that most people never notice. I called ahead to restaurants. I cooked at home when I was not certain we could eat safely anywhere nearby. I kept an EpiPen in my handbag at all times and I knew exactly how to use it. I did all of this without resentment. Because this was the man I loved and it was a serious medical situation and managing it was simply what you did. For 3 years I managed it. 3 years of carrying an EpiPen. 3 years of calling ahead. 3 years of cooking meals that were shellfish-free, which meant, because I love to cook and because shellfish is in more things than most people realize, that an entire category of my cooking simply disappeared. No prawn curries. No crab. No lobster on special occasions. No Thai food at most restaurants because the risk of cross-contamination was too high. No spontaneous dinners at seafood places with friends because the kitchen environment was not safe enough. I made all of these adjustments without complaint. I made them as naturally as I made any other adjustment in a marriage, the way you adapt to another person when you are genuinely committed to sharing a life with them. Our friends knew about the allergy. Our family knew about it. My mother-in-law had a separate set of pots and pans for when we visited, because Raj had told her cross-contamination was a concern. I had thought, when she mentioned this once, that it seemed like a lot, but I had not said so, because who was I to decide how much precaution was appropriate for someone else's medical condition? Raj himself managed it with what I thought was a kind of pragmatic acceptance. He did not complain about the restrictions. He thanked me sometimes for the care I took. He seemed, as far as I could observe, to simply have organized his life around an unfortunate reality. I never questioned it. Why would I? The evening in October was Raj's 32nd birthday. I had planned a surprise. Not a party. Raj did not like large gatherings, but a dinner at a restaurant he had mentioned once, months earlier, that he had always wanted to try. An upscale place in the city that had recently opened to excellent reviews. I had called ahead, as I always did, to explain the allergy and confirm they could accommodate it safely. They had been reassuring, they had a clear protocol, the kitchen was careful, they could absolutely make it work. I had booked a table for two and arranged to meet him there after he finished work, telling him only that I had made plans for his birthday and to meet me at the address I sent him. Or that was the plan. What actually happened was that I arrived early. I arrived 20 minutes before the reservation because I wanted to speak with the manager in person about the allergy, an extra layer of caution, the kind of thing I did without thinking because 3 years of careful management had made it automatic. I walked into the restaurant. And I saw Raj, he was already there. At a table, not our reserved table, but a different table, smaller, near the back. He was not alone. He was with a colleague I recognized from photographs, a man named Sanjay who he worked with and occasionally mentioned. And on the table in front of Raj, on a plate he was eating from with complete relaxation and evident enjoyment, was a prawn dish. The expression on his face when he saw me is something I will not easily forget. It moved through several things in quick succession: shock, recognition, calculation, and then something that settled into a kind of careful blankness that I had never seen on his face before. The blankness of someone deciding, in real time, what version of events to offer. I walked to the table. I sat down in the empty chair across from him. Sanjay, to his credit, understood immediately that something significant was happening and excused himself with a quietly murmured apology and disappeared. I looked at Raj. I looked at the prawns. I said, "How long?" He said, "Myra." I said, "How long have you been eating shellfish?" He was quiet for a moment. Then he said, "I should explain." I said, "Yes. You should." He said, "I do not have a shellfish allergy." I had already known this, the evidence was in front of me, but hearing him say it was still something. A specific and vertiginous something. The experience of a reality you have been living in shifting suddenly underfoot. I said, "I know you do not have a shellfish allergy. I can see the prawns. What I am asking is how long you have not had one." He said, "I have never had one. I sat in that restaurant on what was supposed to be my husband's birthday dinner and I heard the truth. He had never had a shellfish allergy. Not on the third date. Not ever. He had made it up." I said, "Why?" What came next was the part that was worse than the lie. He said he had told it on that third date because he had been nervous and he had wanted to seem more interesting. He said he had read something once about how shared vulnerability creates connection and he had thought, and I want you to hear this clearly because I still cannot quite believe it, he had thought that disclosing a serious medical condition would make me feel trusted and close to him. He said it had worked better than he expected. He said I had responded so warmly and so practically that he had felt closer to me in that conversation than he had in the previous 2 dates combined. He said he had meant to tell me the truth shortly after. But then we kept dating and the lie was already there, and telling the truth would have required admitting the lie, and he had decided, he actually used the word decided, that it was easier to simply maintain it. So he had maintained it. For 3 years. He had watched me carry an EpiPen. He had watched me call ahead to restaurants. He had watched me rearrange my cooking, decline invitations, organize our entire social life around a medical condition he did not have. He had watched all of that and he had said nothing. I looked at my husband across a table of prawns and I tried to understand what I was looking at. I said, "For 3 years I have been managing something that does not exist." He said, "I know." "I am sorry," I said, "you watched me do it. Every time I called a restaurant. Every time I checked a label. Every time I turned down an invitation because the kitchen wasn't safe. You watched me do all of that and you said nothing." He said, "I did not know how to tell you." I said, "You did not know how to tell me, or you did not want to deal with the consequences of telling me?" He did not answer. I left the restaurant. I did not make a scene. I stood up, picked up my bag, and walked out. Not because I was composed, I was not composed. But because the thing I was feeling was too large for a restaurant and I needed to be somewhere private with it. I drove home. I sat in the car in the driveway for a long time before I went inside. And I thought. I thought about the EpiPen. The one I had carried every day for 3 years. The one I had researched how to use. The one I had thanked God more than once that I had never needed. I thought about the Thai restaurant we had turned down with friends, twice, because Raj had said he could not be confident about the kitchen. I thought about the friends who had reorganized dinner party menus around his allergy. My mother-in-law's separate pots and pans. My own cooking, the category of food that had simply disappeared from my kitchen for 3 years. I thought about the trust that I had extended so completely and so automatically that I had never once thought to question it. And I thought about the word he had used. Decided. He had decided it was easier to maintain the lie than to tell the truth. He had made a decision, and then remade it every single day for 3 years, to let me live in a reality that was not real. That was not a mistake. A mistake is a single moment of poor judgment. This was a sustained, daily, active choice. 3 years of choosing the lie over the truth. 3 years of watching me organize my life around something he knew was false and saying nothing. That was not something I could unknow. Raj came home an hour after I did. He sat down across from me in the living room and he had the expression of a man who had been rehearsing something on the drive home and was now, in the moment, uncertain whether any of it was adequate. I let him speak first. He said a great deal. He said he was sorry, many times and in many ways. He said the lie had been stupid and the maintaining of it had been worse. He said he understood that what he had done was a serious breach of trust. He said he had been afraid of losing me and that fear had made him make choices that he now understood were wrong. I listened to all of it. Then I said, "Raj, I need to ask you something and I need you to tell me the truth. Are there other things you have lied to me about?" He said, "No." I said, "Are you certain?" He said, "Yes." I said, "I want to believe that. But I need you to understand something. You just told me that you maintained a lie for 3 years because you were afraid of the consequences of telling the truth. That is the same reason someone lies about anything. So when you tell me there is nothing else, I have no mechanism for trusting that answer." He was quiet. I said, "That is what a lie like this does. It does not just take the specific thing it is about. It takes the credibility of everything around it." He said, "I understand that." I said, "I am not sure you do. Because if you understood it, you would have understood it 3 years ago. I did not make any decisions that night. I had learned, in the years of my adult life, that decisions made in the immediate aftermath of something enormous are usually not the decisions you end up living with, or should not be. The mind is too reactive, too flooded with feeling, to be trusted with permanent choices in those first hours. I told Raj I needed time. He stayed in the house. We did not have the infrastructure for a dramatic separation, practically speaking, but we were not in the same space in the ways that mattered. We were polite and careful and distant in the way of people sharing a home who are not currently sharing anything else. I thought for 2 weeks. I thought about what the lie meant, not the specific content of it, which was strange and almost absurd in isolation, but what it revealed about the person who had told it and maintained it. About his relationship to truth. About his relationship to my trust. About the specific calculation, fear of consequences over respect for my reality, that had driven 3 years of silence. I thought about whether I could rebuild trust with someone who had demonstrated that when trust became inconvenient, they set it aside. I thought about what marriage actually required. Not the ceremony and not the legal structure and not the shared history, but the actual daily functioning of two people who have chosen each other. Which requires, at its most basic level, that each person can rely on what the other says. I had not been able to rely on what Raj said. For 3 years, without knowing it, I had been living inside a lie. Raj and I are in couples therapy. I want to be honest about what that means and what it does not mean. We are in couples therapy because I made a decision, after 2 weeks of thinking, that I was not yet ready to make a permanent decision. That the marriage was not straightforwardly over, because nothing about a marriage of 3 years is straightforward, and that before I decided anything permanent I wanted to understand more about what had actually happened and why. The therapy has been illuminating in ways I had not expected. Raj has said things in those sessions that I could not have extracted in direct conversation. Things about his childhood and about the way deception had functioned in his family and about a deep-seated terror of rejection that had driven choices he had not fully examined. I do not say this to excuse what he did. I say it because understanding the why is different from accepting the what, and I have found that understanding, even imperfect and incomplete understanding, is necessary for me to know what I actually want to do. What I know now is this: the lie was a symptom. Not the only thing. Not the whole story. A symptom of a way of relating to the people closest to him that he has spent his whole life not examining. The therapy is about the examining. Whether that examining produces something we can build on, whether I can trust him again in the specific way that a marriage requires, is something I genuinely do not know yet. I am being honest with myself about not knowing. That honesty feels like the most important thing I am doing right now. I'm 30 years old and my husband lied to me about a food allergy for 3 years, and I spent those 3 years reorganizing my life around something that did not exist. I want to tell you what I know now. I know that trust is not just an emotion, it is a structure. It is the foundation that everything else in a relationship is built on. And when that foundation is compromised, everything built on it becomes uncertain. Not necessarily destroyed, but uncertain. And living with that uncertainty, honestly, without pretending it is not there, is one of the hardest things I have ever done. I also know something about lies that I did not understand before this happened. A lie is not a single event. It is a pattern. Every day that the lie continues is another day it is chosen. 3 years means over 1,000 days of choosing the lie over the truth. That is not carelessness. That is a decision, renewed daily, to prioritize your own comfort over your partner's reality. Understanding that has helped me be clear about what I am actually evaluating in therapy. Not the original lie, which was foolish and wrong but perhaps understandable in the limited context of a nervous third date. But the 3 years of maintenance. The decision, made every morning for over 1,000 mornings, not to tell me. That is what I am sitting with, and I know one more thing, which is perhaps the most important. I carried an EpiPen for 3 years for a man who did not need it. I did that out of love. Complete and genuine and careful love. That love was real, even if the allergy was not. And whatever I decide about the marriage, whatever comes next, the love was real. I was real. And I am still here, still standing, still honest. My name is Myra Shilpa. I am 30 years old. My husband said he was deathly allergic. I caught him eating that exact food. And the truth was worse than the lie. That is my story. I carried an EpiPen for 3 years. I called ahead. I checked labels. I turned down invitations. I did all of it for love. And then I walked into a restaurant and found out the love was real but the allergy was not. The hardest part was not the lie. It was understanding what the lie said about the man who told it. Thank you for listening. This is Haely Stories. We will see you in the next one.